Jennifer Walsh had been cataloging items for the estate sale when she found the framed photograph tucked behind other pictures in Mrs. Catherine Miller's attic in Charleston, South Carolina. The elderly woman had passed away at 98, leaving behind a house filled with decades of family memories that no living relatives could identify. Most of these belonged to my aunt, Mrs. Miller's neighbor, Patricia Adams explained as she helped Jennifer sort through the belongings. Catherine never married or had children of her own, but she kept everything from her family's past. Jennifer carefully examined the formal family portrait, dated 1922. A well-dressed couple stood behind an ornate chair where a woman in her 60s sat holding a baby. Two young children, perhaps 8 and 10 years old, flanked the group. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothing, suggesting this was taken for a special occasion. Beautiful family, Patricia commented, looking over Jennifer's shoulder. Catherine used to say this was taken at her family's plantation house, but she never talked much about those days. Jennifer studied the photograph more closely with her professional appraiser's eye. The composition was typical of 1920s formal portraits: stiff poses, serious expressions, expensive clothing indicating wealth and status. But something about the baby drew her attention. While everyone else in the photograph faced the camera directly with composed expressions, the baby's face was turned at an odd angle, and there seemed to be something unusual about its features. "Patricia," Jennifer said slowly, "do you have a magnifying glass? There's something strange about this baby." Patricia retrieved a small lens from Catherine's sewing basket. As Jennifer positioned it over the baby's face, what she saw made her stomach turn. The infant's face showed clear signs of severe bruising, dark marks around the eyes and cheeks that couldn't be shadows or photographic artifacts. "Oh my God," Jennifer whispered. "This baby has been badly beaten." Dr. Michael Harrison, a forensic photographer at the Medical University of South Carolina, adjusted his high-resolution scanner to examine the 1922 photograph. Jennifer had brought it to his laboratory, unable to shake the disturbing image of the injured baby. "The photograph is definitely authentic," Dr. Harrison confirmed, analyzing the paper composition and printing techniques. Silver gelatin print, consistent with professional photography from 1922. The aging patterns and chemical signatures all match the period. Jennifer leaned forward anxiously. "But what about the baby's injuries?" Dr. Harrison positioned the photograph under his most powerful magnification equipment and carefully adjusted the lighting. His professional demeanor gradually shifted to concern, then horror. This is documentation of severe child abuse. The baby's face was now clearly visible in disturbing detail. Multiple contusions around both eyes, swelling on the left cheek, what appeared to be finger marks on the infant's neck, and bruising consistent with being struck repeatedly. "Could these be natural markings or photographic flaws?" Jennifer asked hopefully. "No," Dr. Harrison said grimly. "These are definitely traumatic injuries. The pattern and coloration are consistent with physical abuse of an infant, probably occurring within hours of this photograph being taken." Dr. Harrison sat back, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. In 15 years of forensic work, he'd seen countless cases of child abuse, but never documented so clearly in a formal family portrait. "Jennifer, this photograph is evidence of a crime. Someone took a family portrait immediately after severely beating this baby. The question is whether they were documenting their crime intentionally, or whether they were so callous they didn't think the injuries would be visible." Jennifer felt sick. The peaceful family gathering had transformed into documentation of horrific child abuse. Who would do this to a baby and then pose for a family photograph? "Someone who felt completely untouchable," Dr. Harrison replied. "Someone who believed they'd never be held accountable." 3 days later, Jennifer found herself in the archives of the Charleston County Library, surrounded by genealogical records, newspaper collections, and historical documents. Dr. Harrison had connected her with Robert Chen, a local historian who specialized in Charleston's prominent families from the 1920s. Formal family portraits like this were extremely expensive in 1922, Chen explained, examining the photograph. "The clothing, the setting, the professional quality, this represents significant wealth and social standing." He pulled out thick volumes of social registers and family histories. The composition suggests this might be a multi-generational portrait, perhaps grandparents with their adult children and grandchildren. Jennifer pointed to the elegant woman holding the baby. "She seems to be the matriarch of the family. The way everyone is positioned around her suggests she was the central figure." Chen studied the background details visible in the photograph. The interior suggests a plantation house. You can see elements of antebellum architecture. Many of Charleston's wealthy families still lived in their ancestral homes in 1922. Hours of searching through records yielded disturbing patterns. Chen found multiple references to wealthy Charleston families in the 1920s who were investigated for various forms of domestic violence, but whose cases were quietly dismissed due to their social prominence. The early 1920s were a particularly dark time for child welfare, Chen explained. There were few legal protections for children, especially in wealthy families where authorities were reluctant to intervene. In the Charleston Evening Post from September 1922, Jennifer found a brief item that made her blood run cold. Infant death investigated. City authorities are looking into the death of a young child at a prominent Charleston residence. Family members report the infant died from natural causes, but medical personnel have requested additional examination. The article provided no names, but it was dated just 2 months after the family portrait. "Robert," Jennifer said quietly, "what if this photograph documents the abuse that led to this baby's death?" Chen's face was grim. "If so, we're looking at evidence of murder that was covered up nearly a century ago." The next morning brought oppressive humidity as Jennifer stood outside what had once been the Ravenswood plantation, now a luxury hotel on the Ashley River. The antebellum mansion matched architectural details visible in the background of the 1922 photograph. Mrs. Eleanor Foster, the hotel's historian who had worked there for 25 years, met Jennifer in the ornate lobby. "Ravenswood has a complex history," she explained, leading Jennifer to a private office filled with historical documents. The plantation was owned by the Beaumont family from 1847 until 1924. Mrs. Foster produced boxes of family records, photographs, and newspaper clippings. The Beaumont family was extremely wealthy and influential, but there were always dark rumors about how they treated people, both their servants and their own family members. Jennifer examined historical photographs of the Beaumont family from various periods. "Do you recognize anyone from my photograph?" Mrs. Foster studied the 1922 portrait carefully. "That's definitely Constance Beaumont holding the baby. She was the family matriarch. And those are her son, William, and daughter-in-law Margaret with their children." "What happened to the family after 1922? "That's where the story gets tragic," Mrs. Foster said, pulling out a folder marked "Family Deaths." "Several family members died unexpectedly in the early 1920s. There were whispers about domestic violence, but nothing was ever proven." Mrs. Foster showed Jennifer a death certificate dated November 15th, 1922. "Baby Richard Beaumont. Age 8 months. Cause of death. Accidental injuries from fall." "Accidental fall?" Jennifer questioned. "The official story was that the baby fell downstairs," Mrs. Foster explained. But the family's former servants told different stories. They claimed William Beaumont had violent rages, especially when he'd been drinking, and that he regularly beat his wife and children. Mrs. Foster lowered her voice. "One servant, an elderly woman named Clara, worked for the family for 40 years. Before she died in the 1960s, she told people that baby Richard was beaten to death by his own father, and that the family covered it up." Jennifer looked at the photograph again, studying William Beaumont's face. He appeared to be a respectable businessman, but now she wondered if she was looking at a child murderer who had posed for a family portrait immediately after abusing his infant son. Dr. Harrison's office felt tense as Jennifer, Robert Chen, and Detective Lisa Martinez, a Charleston police investigator specializing in cold cases, reviewed the disturbing evidence. Detective Martinez had accessed sealed records from the 1922 investigation into baby Richard's death. "The original investigation was highly irregular," Detective Martinez explained, studying copies of police reports from nearly a century ago. "Multiple witnesses reported signs of abuse, but the case was closed within days without a thorough examination." She spread out documents showing the extent of official corruption. The Beaumont family had connections throughout Charleston's power structure. The police chief, the coroner, even the judge, all had business relationships with the family. Chen had discovered additional information about the family's servants. "I found employment records showing that several servants quit the Beaumont household immediately after baby Richard's death. That level of staff turnover was highly unusual." Dr. Harrison had been re-examining the photograph with specialized equipment. "The baby's injuries are consistent with shaken baby syndrome, combined with physical assault. The pattern of bruising suggests the child was grabbed forcefully around the face and neck." Jennifer found a handwritten statement in the police file that had been marked, "Discredited, do not pursue." It was signed by Clara Washington, the family's longtime cook. "I seen Mr. William hit that baby many times. The night before the picture was took, he was drunk and angry about business troubles. Baby Richard was crying, and Mr. William just lost his mind. He shook that baby so hard I thought he was going to kill him right then. Mrs. Margaret tried to stop him, but he hit her too. Clara's statement continued. Next morning, they called in the photographer like nothing happened. That baby could barely hold his head up, but they made us all act like everything was normal. Mrs. Constance kept saying the bruises would fade and nobody would remember. Detective Martinez had found similar statements from other servants, all dismissed by investigating officers. Every witness who tried to report William Beaumont's abuse was either intimidated into silence or had their testimony ruled inadmissible. They took this photograph as proof that the family was respectable, Jennifer realized, but instead they created permanent evidence of their crime. The Medical University of South Carolina's Pathology Department felt clinical and sterile as Jennifer and Detective Martinez met with Dr. Patricia Wong, a forensic pathologist who specialized in historical cases involving child abuse. Even without examining the actual remains, this photograph provides compelling evidence of fatal child abuse, Dr. Wong explained, studying high-resolution images of baby Richard's injuries. The severity and pattern of bruising indicates repeated, intentional violence against an infant. Using modern forensic techniques applied to the historical photograph, Dr. Wong could identify specific types of trauma. These injuries around the eyes and face are consistent with what we call raccoon eyes, typically caused by severe head trauma. The bruising on the neck suggests manual strangulation. Detective Martinez had obtained baby Richard's original death certificate and autopsy report. The 1922 coroner listed cause of death as accidental fall resulting in head trauma. But look at this note in the margin. The coroner had written in small print, injuries inconsistent with reported accident. Family refuses further examination. Case closed by order of Police Chief Morrison. Dr. Wong compared the photographic evidence with the official autopsy findings. The injuries visible in this photograph are far more extensive than what the coroner documented. Either he was incompetent or he was deliberately falsifying the report. Given the Beaumont family's influence, which seems more likely, Jennifer asked. Deliberate cover-up, Dr. Wong replied without hesitation. The pattern of injuries, the family's behavior in posing for a photograph so soon after the abuse, the rushed investigation, everything points to a coordinated effort to hide murder. Chen had been researching similar cases from the same era. I found records of at least 6 other suspicious child deaths in prominent Charleston families between 1920 and 1925. All were ruled accidental. All investigations were brief, and in every case, witnesses who tried to report abuse were silenced. William Beaumont wasn't an isolated case, Detective Martinez realized. He was part of a system that protected wealthy men who murdered their own children. The photograph had revealed not just one crime, but evidence of systematic protection of child murderers among Charleston's elite families. Back in Charleston, Chen had made breakthrough discoveries in the Beaumont family's private papers, which had been donated to the South Carolina Historical Society after the last family member died in the 1980s. The family kept extensive records, Chen explained as they gathered in Dr. Harrison's office. Letters, diary entries, even business correspondence that references the problems with William's temper. He had found a letter from Constance Beaumont to her sister dated October 1922. William's drinking has gotten worse since the incident with little Richard. Margaret is terrified to be alone with him. I fear for the other children's safety, but what can we do? If word got out about what really happened, our family's reputation would be destroyed forever. Jennifer discovered Margaret Beaumont's diary entries from the weeks following her baby's death. The writing revealed a woman living in terror. I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see Richard's little face, so hurt and frightened. William says I must never speak of it, that it was an accident, but I know the truth. I know what he did. Margaret's final entry, dated just before her own death in 1923, was heartbreaking. I am leaving this record for someone who might someday care about the truth. William murdered our baby in a drunken rage. The photograph we took the next day shows Richard's injuries clearly. I pray someday justice will come, even if I am not alive to see it. Detective Martinez had uncovered additional evidence in police archives. Margaret Beaumont died 6 months after her baby, officially from pneumonia. But I found a physician's report suggesting her death might have been suicide or murder disguised as natural causes. Dr. Harrison had been analyzing other family photographs from the same period. Oh, look at this. There are other images showing suspicious injuries on the children. The Beaumont family was systematically documenting their abuse without realizing it. Chen had found business records showing that William Beaumont's violence extended beyond his family. Multiple employees filed complaints about physical assault, but all were dismissed or settled quietly. The man was a serial abuser who used his wealth and position to escape consequences. The 1922 photograph isn't just evidence of baby Richard's murder, Jennifer realized. It's documentation of a family where violence was routine and protected by money and social status. The Charleston Police Department's basement archives held records that painted a disturbing picture of systematic corruption in the 1920s. Detectives Martinez had spent weeks uncovering the full scope of crimes that had been covered up to protect influential families. It wasn't just the Beaumont case, Martinez explained as she spread out dozens of files. Between 1920 and 1930, at least 15 suspicious deaths involving prominent families were investigated and quickly closed without resolution. Jennifer examined reports of other cases. Wives who died from accidental falls, downstairs, children who suffered unfortunate accidents, servants who disappeared after witnessing domestic violence. In every case, brief investigations concluded with no charges filed. Chen had found financial records showing systematic bribery. Police Chief Morrison, Coroner Stevens, and Judge Franklin all received regular payments from various wealthy families. It was an organized system of legal corruption. Dr. Harrison had been analyzing other family photographs from the era, looking for signs of abuse that had been hidden in plain sight. We found at least 8 other family portraits showing evidence of recent violence. Bruises, cuts, fearful expressions that suggest ongoing abuse. These families were documenting their crimes, Dr. Harrison noted. And they were so confident they'd never be held accountable that they preserved evidence of their violence in formal photographs. Detective Martinez had discovered that the corruption extended to the state level. Governor Morrison, yes, related to Police Chief Morrison, received campaign contributions from the same families whose crimes were being covered up. The entire system was designed to protect wealthy abusers. Jennifer found a particularly disturbing document, a 1923 letter from a Charleston physician to state authorities, reporting multiple cases of suspicious injuries in children from prominent families. The letter was stamped "Dismissed, insufficient evidence," and filed away without investigation. Dr. Samuel Richards tried to report what he was seeing, Jennifer read from the letter. He documented case after case of obvious child abuse, but every report was ignored or suppressed. Chen had located Dr. Richards' complete records, hidden in his family's papers. He kept detailed documentation of every suspicious case he encountered, hoping someday the evidence could be used to seek justice. The 1922 photograph of baby Richard had opened a window into decades of systematic violence and corruption that had protected child murderers and allowed them to continue their crimes with impunity. The breakthrough came when Patricia Adams, Catherine Miller's neighbor, called Jennifer with startling news. While cleaning out more of Catherine's belongings, she had found a hidden compartment in an old desk containing letters and documents that Catherine had kept secret her entire life. Catherine was a Beaumont, Patricia announced when they gathered at the house. Her real name was Catherine Beaumont Morrison. She was William Beaumont's younger sister, and she spent her entire life carrying the guilt of what her family did. The hidden documents included Catherine's own account of baby Richard's murder, written in 1945 when she learned that William had died without ever being held accountable. I was only 16 in 1922, but I saw everything. I watched my brother beat that innocent baby until it could barely breathe, then force us all to pose for a photograph the next day as if nothing had happened. Mother insisted that family reputation was more important than justice. I have lived with this shame my entire life. Catherine's letter continued. I kept the photograph all these years as evidence, hoping someday someone would be brave enough to seek justice for little Richard. I changed my name and never married because I couldn't bear the thought of bringing children into a world where such evil could be protected by money and position. Jennifer discovered that Catherine had spent decades trying to find ways to expose her brother's crime. She had written to authorities multiple times over the years, always using anonymous letters, trying to provide information about baby Richard's death. Patricia found additional documents showing that Catherine had secretly donated money to child protection organizations throughout her life. She was trying to make amends for her family's crimes, Patricia realized. Detective Martinez had worked with federal authorities to officially reopen the case. Even though William Beaumont has been dead for decades, we can still provide official recognition that baby Richard was murdered in clear, a record of the false, accidental death. Ruling. Dr. Harrison had created a comprehensive forensic report documenting the evidence of abuse visible in the photograph. This case will be used to train investigators in recognizing signs of historical child abuse that were previously overlooked. Catherine's final letter, dated just months before her death, revealed her hope. I pray that someday, baby Richard's death will serve to protect other children. The photograph shows the truth that my family tried to hide. Let it speak for all the innocent victims who were silenced by wealth and power. 6 months after the discovery, Jennifer stood in the Baby Richard Beaumont Memorial Garden, a small section of Charleston's Marion Square dedicated to child victims of domestic violence. The case had sparked widespread reform in how historical crimes involving child abuse were investigated and prosecuted. Dr. Harrison had worked with the Charleston Police Department to establish new protocols for examining historical evidence of child abuse in wealthy families. Catherine Beaumont Morrison's courage in preserving evidence has opened dozens of similar cases across the South. Detective Martinez had used the Beaumont case to identify patterns of corruption and cover-ups that had protected child abusers for decades. We've reopened investigations into at least 20 suspicious child deaths from the 1920s and 1930s. Chen had established a research program at the Charleston Museum focused on uncovering hidden histories of domestic violence in prominent families. Richard's story has inspired other families to come forward with evidence of historical abuse that was covered up. Patricia Adams had worked with child protection agencies to ensure that Catherine Miller's estate was used to fund programs helping abused children. Catherine spent her life trying to make amends. This foundation continues her work. Jennifer often returned to look at the 1922 family portrait, now displayed in the Memorial Garden with full context about Richard's murder and his family's cover-up. When visitors asked about the baby's injuries, she would explain how one photograph had exposed a century-old murder and inspired modern reforms in child protection. The Beaumont case had led to new legislation requiring thorough investigation of any child death involving wealthy or influential families, preventing the kind of systematic cover-ups that had protected William Beaumont. Most importantly, Richard's story reminded society that child abuse occurs in all social classes, and that wealth and position should never protect those who harm children. The peaceful family portrait that it seemed to show a respectable Charleston family had revealed itself to be documentation of a horrific crime, preserved by a guilty sister who spent her lifetime hoping someone would finally seek justice for her murdered nephew. Baby Richard's face, with its clear evidence of abuse, had finally spoken the truth that his family tried to silence, ensuring that his death would protect other children from similar violence.